Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are with our certified hypnotherapist and life coach and friend, Tracy Clairmont, joining us here today. Again, we're here to talk more about the work she does that can be of such benefit to you all with hypnotherapy and coaching. And she does in-person work and also, of course, virtually. So welcome to the show, Tracy. Where do you hail from?
I hail from Western Montana. Beautiful, beautiful Western Montana.
Beautiful. And we're excited to have you back. For those new listeners and viewers, let's get a little insight into who you are, what you do. And I know we have a great topic lined up for today.
Yeah, so I am Tracy Clairmont. I'm a certified hypnotherapist and a life coach. I can be reached at my email, which is hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com. And that's hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com.
Beautiful. And by the way, the work, we've got to talk the past few weeks about all the work that she does to help people. And there's hundreds of different things that hypnotherapy can help with that. Just to let you know, I've learned a lot as well. And not just the weight loss, the smoking, these are all great things, though, but even past childhood traumas and so much more. And speaking of childhood, I know today we're kind of going to talk about children. And maybe, how can we start teaching our children basically unconditional love and acceptance for themselves and even others? I would love to talk more about this today and talk about hypnotherapy with children or adolescents, youth in general, for today. So please fill us in on your thoughts on this.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking last time when we did a podcast, we talked about unconditional love and acceptance for ourselves and some ideas about how we start that process so that we can move through this world with, love and peace and less fear. So I thought today we'd talk about how we can help our children develop unconditional love and acceptance for themselves, which is so, so very important. And we as caretakers are the absolute key to that with our children. So, I've talked about before how we are born into this world just pure, perfect love and light. We're full of self-confidence. We're full of self-worth. And then as immediately when we come into this world, we start to have experience that begins to shape our perception of the world. And we, as primary caretakers of our children, we begin to influence our children's perception of the world. And in fact, we are the very example that our children, develop when they come into this world because they're completely reliant upon us for their survival. So immediately, our children start to have experience in this world based on the care that they are given by their primary caretakers. And, I'm talking about the first 5 years of life, and those are attachment years.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super important years for our children. These years are the years in which they develop their perception of the world. Like, what do relationships have to offer?
Mm-hmm.
Are they safe? Are they unsafe? Can they be trusted? Are they not to be trusted? If I express a need, will my need be met? Am I lovable? Am I worthy? Am I deserving? Do I matter? Am I enough? All of these things, the foundation for all of those things are laid in the first 5 years of life. So I am here to just remind people of that.
Yeah.
And to really stress the importance of that.
Mm-hmm.
When our needs aren't met fully, then we end up having cracks in our foundation.
Yeah.
That foundation that carries us through life. And it's a more difficult process as adults for us to go back and fill in the cracks in our foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work. So I just really encourage caretakers to be mindful of the foundation they're creating. Now, how do we create a solid foundation for our children? Well, we be mindful of their needs and we meet their needs to the best of our ability. We meet their needs through consistency. We teach them how to regulate their emotion by literally helping them, soothing them, comforting them around emotion. We're not born into this world knowing how to regulate emotion,
Yeah.
right? That's why we have screaming babies. Well, they're expressing a need.
Yeah.
They
Uh-huh.
need to be shown how
Oh
to
my gosh.
regulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I've had this uh, talk with lots of people, and I've actually felt a lot of pushback from people. But it is, in my opinion, a fact that you cannot spoil an infant. There's a lot of people that believe that
Spoil.
put a baby in a room, let them cry it out, they'll eventually go to sleep. Well, I'd love for people to really think about what that is teaching our babies.
Mm-hmm.
And what belief might they be establishing if
Yeah.
they're left to their own accord to figure these things out by themselves? Well,
Mm-hmm.
those are moments where they develop the understanding that relationships can't be trusted, that people won't be there to support them in the way that they need to. And you might think, well, they're just babies, but these are, when we go back in hypnotherapy, we go back and back and back to significant events. We go all the way back to these first few years of life when these perceptions about self-worth have been established.
I had a couple trying to convince me when I had my first son. It was 2015, January. And they were just like, we did it this way. And the crying, I said, like, put him in there. You're going to let him cry all night. I'm like, wait, so he's going to be pooping, peeing on himself, crying, screaming. I'm like, what if he chokes? What if will put the camera in there? But I'm like, the fear for me as a parent to leave my child to teach, I just could not do it. And I didn't. And some people, say that's wrong or that's right, but whatever. But I just could not bring myself to do it. I find that traumatic, not only for the child, for me, listening to my child
Yeah.
scream, not knowing, like, I just want to hug and love it. Like, is it really going to matter? Like, do I, like this whole, yeah,
Right.
that was hard for me and I chose
So
not to, but
a couple of things with that. First off, you're going against what your intuition is telling you to do,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So never go against your intuition. We always want to trust our intuition. If your intuition is saying go to your child, go to your child. And
Mm-hmm.
the danger in, it is true. If you leave a baby in a room to scream and cry until they're exhausted, they will stop crying eventually. But why will they stop crying? They'll stop crying because they've given up on
Yeah.
somebody coming to them to meet their needs. That's that's not a positive experience for your child, right?
Mm-mm.
So go to soothe, comfort, help them regulate, and let them know that you are their relationship
Mm-hmm.
trusted. They're super important to you and in this world. They matter. They can have feelings, and you will be there to help them with that. Those are the messages that we want to instill in our children because that's a healthy foundation. So that when our kids are teenagers, say, they will have an understanding that they can go to somebody, that somebody will listen, that they can have their feelings validated rather being completely alone and lost and maybe go into unhealthy sources for maybe numbing feelings or whatever they may do. We want to teach them that there's safety in all of
Mm-hmm.
it and that they do matter and they are enough. So all of these things are things that are super important, super important right from the beginning. And if we think about what inconsistent caregivers, inconsistency in caretaking looks like, it can be a parent who kind of comes and goes. It could be a parent who um, leaves their children with lots of other people. It could be
Mm-hmm.
a parent who is in an abusive relationship and is trying their hardest but isn't available themselves because they're trying to survive. You know, in domestic violence, when children are very little, it's super important to remember that our children's survival is so connected to their primary caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
Cognitively, they don't make a distinction between themselves and their caretaker because their survival is so much connected to that. So whatever's happening to the,
Mm-hmm.
they feel as though it's happening to themselves, you know. So domestic violence situations are overwhelmingly fearful situations for our kids. Or like with substance abuse, you know, a parent, when they're under the influence, they're not available emotionally to their children, sometimes physically even, but even if they're there in the same space, they're not attuned, they're not available to them. Happens with depressed parents as well. You know, they're not available, they're not attuned and connected. So lots of different things to consider and think about when you're thinking about the importance of, um, you know, the foundation we're laying for our children. Um, yeah, so I would just encourage people to be mindful, be very aware of the experience they create for their children. So one of the ways we can create a positive experience, a healthy experience, build a healthy foundation for our kids is, like I was saying, in those attachment years, meeting our children's needs, um, doing things intuitively. There's so much out there with potty training and bottle feeding and things like that. I really encourage people to do what feels right, you know, to not get caught up in reading a whole bunch of different things, and just do what feels right. If if you don't have, maybe you didn't have a parent who met all of your needs, then yeah, you can look some different things up and read about it and get some self-help kind of stuff. But always, like you were just saying, do what feels right intuitively because that's your instinctual drive to meet your child's needs. And, you know, in regard to this thought of spoiling a child, that kind of gets along, you know, like people say, well, you can't hold them too much or they're going to expect it all the time. They're going to be
Yeah.
spoiled. They're going to be little monsters. Well, again, you know, a child needs the cognitive ability to say, if I do this behavior, I'm going to get my way because being spoiled goes into the area of being able to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate other people. Well, infants, toddlers, they're not cognitively at a level where they can make a choice to manipulate a caretaker.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of not worry so much about putting things in terms of spoiling and not really worry about what other people have to say. And there's people out there with all sorts of different parenting styles and advice for you. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just again, kind of take that spoiling word out of there and just focus on the needs. What are
Yeah.
the needs of the child? And focus on meeting those needs, giving them a strong foundation that says, you know what, you are amazing. You're the greatest thing in the whole world. I love you. I will be here for you forever. Those are the kind of things that we want our children to learn and move through the world with. So, along that line, being mindful and aware of the words that we use with our children and the pictures that we create about themselves in their minds. We want those to be
Yeah.
very positive. We
Mm-hmm.
have heavy, 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 heavy influence over that
Yeah.
with our children. So create amazing pictures. Create, like, use amazing words when you're describing them. You know, I raised two of my grandchildren now. I've had them since they were both um, infants, very small. And I make a point to tell them I am so glad that I get to be your mom. I am so thankful to this daughter for letting me be your mom. I'm so thankful. She must have loved you so much to let me be your mom. And I'm so thankful. Like just really painting an amazing picture of what some could view as adversity, right? So, I know I have heavy influence over them. So other things, we can, when we're being mindful and careful of our words, we don't want to belittle our children. We don't want to. It's normal to get angry in parenting. Parenting is hard.
Yeah.
And I never want to paint this
Mm-hmm.
glorious picture that every moment in parenting is easy, because I know for a fact myself that it is not. It's not easy for me with a ton of experience in raising kids. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying every moment is going to be a beautiful, glorious moment,
Mm-hmm.
but do be mindful of what we're communicating. You can discipline your child, you can hold them accountable for behavior without making them believe that their whole identity is tied up in that behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you want to separate that out. You are an amazing, beautiful little girl, and this behavior that you chose is not okay. You are not the behavior. You chose a behavior. I can remember my 12-year-old when she was little. I would make this distinction all the time, and I would discipline and I would hold accountable. And I remember one time she was just crying, 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 and she'd done something wrong, and I was upset with her. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, I made a poor choice. And she just kept saying that, I made a poor choice. And I'm like, well, thank goodness she knows that she made a poor choice. She's not
Wow.
a
Oh
right.
my goodness. That's so preciously sweet though. It's so cute. Like
Yeah,
she's aware and we all do make poor choices at times.
right. And she was
Oh,
like 4 at the time when she
wow.
was saying that. So it is possible to hold your kids accountable without making them feel like they are the
Mm-hmm.
very epitome of the behavior and a bad kid, right? We want to stay away from that.
Yeah.
We also want to be available and accepting of feelings that they're having. We want to help them regulate, and we also want to validate their feelings. So it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hit mama. It's okay to be angry, so validate their feelings and then make a statement, about the behavior. Again, separating things out. Another thing that we can do that helps build that foundation is to focus on the positive.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in our parenting, we get so caught up in correcting our kids
Yep.
that we forget to put words to and voice when our kids are doing something
Mm-hmm.
right. And it's super important. If you want to reinforce positive behavior in your children, then you want to put words to and voice they're doing things the way you want them to do things. And it could be anything. It could be anything that they're doing. Like if they're playing nicely with a toy for a few minutes while you get the dishes done or something like that, right? You could say, oh my gosh, you did such a great job playing with that toy while I got this done. Thank you so much. And offer gratitude and things. Um, and if you practice these things regularly, then they become habits for you and your parenting. It might feel a little weird, and I'm sure there's people out there thinking, oh my gosh, she is too foo-fooey for me with parenting. That's never going to work. If you practice those things and are consistent, then these things will work, and your child will have self-confidence and self-esteem and self-worth and self-love that will be super important in regard to carrying through their lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
and building that foundation. You really want them to you really want to help them have that belief in themselves that they matter and that they're good enough and they are enough in this world. And these are just some basic recommendations, some basic thoughts on how we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I was just going to give a quick example of somebody I worked with a few years ago in hypnotherapy, who a beautiful young woman who came to me with very low self-confidence, and she described some situations where she had been victimized by males, and when she was talking about it, she was blaming herself, like, well, if I hadn't done this, then this wouldn't have happened, and well, I shouldn't have done this, and then that, well, she was talking about sexual assault, and nobody asks or wants to be sexually assaulted first.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing you can do
No.
can make it okay for somebody to sexually assault you. So we went back and did hypnotherapy, and we went back to scenes. The first scene, she was 15 years old, and she was expressing to her mom that she was feeling depressed. And
Mm-hmm.
her mom kind of came at her with, you don't have anything
Ah,
about, suck it up and move on, get over it. So that's, invalidation of feelings.
yeah.
At that moment, she was taught to keep her thoughts and feelings to herself.
Mm.
The next scene was a babysitter scene where she was getting physically hurt by another kid, her hair pulled, hitting,
Oh.
and she felt scared and hurt and mad. And that was the scene where,
Bullying. I just can't even think. It just breaks my heart. That's horrible.
so in that moment, she said she developed a belief that she didn't matter and her safety didn't matter.
Yeah.
And then we went back even farther to where she was just able to walk. And she was in a situation with her parents where they were amongst some horses, and she slipped away into the horses into a very dangerous situation. And her dad found her, and she had been hurt. And the dad was yelling at the mom for not watching her more carefully. The mom started saying it was her fault for slipping away. And in that moment, she really learned that her safety didn't matter, and she was actually to blame when she got hurt. And these were beliefs that followed her through life and put her in dangerous situations. And we did the healing around. But those are examples of how her caretakers laid the groundwork for the limiting beliefs that she carried through her life.
Mm-hmm.
Those are We did the healing, and she did much better afterwards. She developed the capacity to protect herself. She went out into the world and traveled and got a job and is doing really well. So the hypnotherapy really, really worked for her, and it was transformational, life changing. That's an example of messages she received when she was very young that laid the groundwork for her, and then she had to fill in the cracks.
And I know, like you mentioned in the beginning, I think it's up until we're age, what, 6? The learning,
Oh,
but
birth to 5 are
yeah,
attachment years.
but but we could. There's still hope for children that don't know these principles and the positivity, and we could change still, right? Adolescents, I mean,
Yes.
we could
Yes.
still guide them to teach them how to do this. It's never too late. I just want to bring that up. I know,
Thank you.
don't feel. I mean, my kids are 6 and 8, so technically they're out of that phase. But I know, like, my other son, like, one son I think needs more help than the other, and I just feel like, oh my gosh, I passed that point of no return because everything is now learned in his head by this age, and I'm like, how can he ever
No,
unlearn it? And I panic. But no.
we can always create new experience for our children,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
Our children can always re-experience, and
Good.
so we can, it's multiple experiences of something different,
All right. Good.
which
Well,
creates healing.
no, thank you for that, Tracy. If
Yeah.
someone does want to reach out to you to work with you, would you mind sharing all your contact information?
Yes, I can best be reached at my email,
Mm-hmm.
hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com. That's HYPNOWITHTRACY @yahoo.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great topic of conversation for our youth today. And so many of us that could benefit from this as parents, as friends, aunts, uncles, cousins. I mean, think about it. Yeah. It reminds me of that song. It sounds cheesy, but it was my favorite song on my communion day. And I can't sing, so I won't sing it. Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give us a sense of
Yes.
it's so true, but you have to. And oh my gosh, yeah, just thinking about it, they really are such beautiful little beings, and we have to nurture them the best we can. And and the more nurturing that you hope your child is just physically, mentally better. At least more loving for sure, right? There's no guarantees, but we try our best as parents. And thank you for making me think about this and about my actions. School comes home, they come home and then it's like homework and I get stressed and over. They pick that up too. We got to remember they're watching us. So we also we got to speak and do as we tell them to do, right? We can't set a bad examples. If I say no yelling, that means mom's no yelling. So we also have to be very cautious of that. Tracy, thank you so much. Pleasure having you back here, and looking forward to next week. Are we back on?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. I'm glad. I said that to two people today, and they're like, "Oh, it's my last show." I'm like, "I didn't know. Like, I never know. So just tell me, please." No, not goodbye. It's see you later, but we will really see each other next week. Good. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.